Hey everybody, it's Sophia here, and today we're going to unpack what is the self-esteem triad. What are the three core muscles that we need to develop in order to have healthy and high self-esteem? Now, let's start by taking a step into a video game. I invite you to imagine that you are playing a video game, that you are a character in this video game, and that you're just standing on set. And in front of you, you can see a triangle. Very well lit up, inviting you to take a step into it. Now, for the next 5 minutes of this video game stage, what's going to happen is you're going to have to stand in that triangle and all these things are going to come at you. You have no idea what they are, where they're coming from, speed, velocity, angle, width, but it's your job to simply hold your ground, to stay in that triangle, to hold that space, to dodge, to duck, to jump, to do whatever you need to do to maintain your position in that triangle. Okay, so we're clear. This is how the game is played. Now here's how it's scored. Every time you take a step out of the triangle, you lose points. Every time you take a step back into the triangle, you get bonus points. And every time that you stay within the triangle and dodge whatever it is that's there, you also get points. At the end of each stage, if you're within the triangle, you move to the next round. If you're not, then you start all over again until you finally are within the triangle at stage end. Now, what is this game that I'm referring to? The triangle on the floor is high self-esteem. Within the triangle is things like self-respect, self-love, seeing your value, your worth, having confidence in your abilities. And outside of the triangle are things like self-doubt, low self-worth, feeling like you don't have this and you don't know what you're capable of, feeling like everyone else perhaps outside of you has more going on for them than you have going on for you. Now, the mystery of self-esteem is that for some reason it's often communicated in a sense of binary. You're either in or you're out. Whereas the reality for most people is that we're all on the journey of trying to balance time spent inside the triangle with time spent outside the triangle. Individuals with higher self-esteem spend more consistent time inside the triangle than outside, but they still have moments where they step outside. Individuals with lower self-esteem possibly feel like they spend more time outside of the triangle than they do inside, but they also still have moments when they step inside. So the purpose of this game is to spend as much time as possible inside the triangle and to create consistency and stability around that. The more time we spend inside, the higher self-esteem we have. So how do we actually win? What muscles do we have to develop in us to be able to jump, duck, move, be agile? These are the three sides of the triangle or the self-esteem triad that we're about to unpack. So let's get started. Tell me first, who here knows the value of self-esteem? Who here knows why self-esteem is so important? It's not kind of just like a trophy, oh, she has high self-esteem, like as if saying she has a high IQ. It's a fundamental component that's tied to a lot of really great things. So what we've found statistically and scientifically is that there's an incredible connection between high self-esteem and better quality relationships, career success, better health outcomes, like literally lower levels of disease, lower levels of chronic illnesses, higher levels of, what's that word, bounce back, or shorter periods of recovery. You also have things like higher wealth indicators, usually higher levels of belonging, connection, and social status groups. There's a lot of positives that come from high self-esteem. And it's not to say that high self-esteem causes those other components, but it is to say that there's a relationship between having a great relationship with ourselves and having a great relationship with the world outside. Now, if you talk to a coach, they go a step further and say the only way to have a good relationship with the outside world is to have a relationship with the inside world first. A great relationship with that inside world. So let's unpack the three ways that we can do that. So side number one of that triangle is our emotional world. This is the how of our emotional world, how we experience our emotions, how to get more out of that, how to have emotional intimacy and awareness. Side number 2 is our needs, being connected to our needs, knowing what our needs are, and taking responsibility for actually meeting our own needs. And the third side of that triangle is the side of boundaries, having boundaries in our lives that we adhere to. So let's get started with emotions. Now, it's unlikely that in this 10-minute blog video or vlog that I'm going to untap all of the work that needs to be done here, but it's more of an introduction to let you know that there are steps available for you to take and to know where to start when it comes to developing your self-esteem muscle. So when we talk about emotions, what we're talking about is our ability to actually experience our full emotional range as humans. So biochemically, we are a little blob of energetic and biochemical, emotional, what do you want to call it? Awesomeness? Too simple. Mastery, I want to say. Because intertwined in each of these moments, there are so many opposing and also complementary emotional chemical reactions happening within us. Now, the more we learn how to navigate those emotions, the more comfortable we are sitting in our emotional truth and being honest with ourselves about what's going on for us in this moment, the more vulnerable we're able to be with our close inner circle about what's happening for us in this moment. Generally, the better quality of life that we open up for ourselves. So one of the core areas and muscles to develop in order to develop high self-esteem is learning how to be okay with all of our emotions. Now, this also means the darker emotions. This also means learning how to sit in sadness, how to sit with fear, how to sit in anxiety, how to sit with anger, as opposed to not sitting with them, ignoring them, and trapping them within us so that they actually have a much larger impact on the way that we move through life. That's the irony of emotions. When we deny that which we deny or ignore, we magnify, and we almost condemn ourselves to experience on repeat. So learning how to move through our emotions with grace and fluidity is fundamental in our relationship with ourselves, is fundamental in accepting ourselves. Because what we're doing is also accepting our emotions without making them mean something about our identity. I feel angry, I am not anger. I feel sad, I am not sad as a person. I am everything. I am joy and happiness. I am fear and anger. I am sadness and tension. I'm all of this combined if I am anything at all. But at the same time, I am none of this. I'm just feeling this. These are transitory visitors in my body, but they are not my body. They are not the whole essence of my body. And that's a large part of what the emotional journey looks like. A large part of it also looks like learning how to communicate and language that which we feel. Now, the next part of the triangle, the triad, is needs. Now, this in itself could be a 30-minute vlog and still not even touch the side. So I'll just touch on a few of those needs. Our needs, we may have individual needs as individuals, meaning what makes my day complete versus what makes some of your days complete is probably not the same thing. I possibly like spending more time alone than the average person. I probably like spending more time out in nature. These are some of my daily and obvious needs. But on a deeper level, each of us as humans share core needs. Now, there's a myriad of ways that this is language. There's a lot of different theories around this, with basically regurgitating the same core essence in different words. The core of what we need is the same as humans. And you'll probably come across things like we need some degree of stability in our lives. Now, this need varies person to person. So some people like change and consistent change. Some people want repetition and structure. When I say stability, what I mean here is that we need to know that the place where we went to sleep last night is the place that we're going to wake up the next morning. We need to know as a species that, generally speaking, the majority of people that we loved and knew in the world yesterday are still here today. We need to know that the seasons are fairly stable and that food will probably grow on the trees. There's certain things that we need to know are stable in order to just be able to operate in our world. Now, some of us have a lower need, as I mentioned on this, than others. But ultimately, the need is there. In a similar way, we all have a need for love. We are human animals and we're bonding creatures, meaning we need to connect with other human animals. Now, some of us meet this need with other species, and we meet these through pets and art and passions, as well as through other people. But ultimately, there is a need to feel love in our hearts, to feel inspired and connected and complete and absolute admiration and love for something or someone. We have a need to matter and to be seen and heard. We need to know that our existence is important to someone or something. In a work context, it can be to know that the work that you're doing matters each day on some level to someone. In a home context, it can mean that knowing that if you were there or not there actually is something that somebody will pick up on. Like they will notice if you leave and don't come back. In a friends context, it's knowing that when somebody perhaps, somebody's thinking of you or somebody cares that you're there or cares that you're going through something. We also have a need to know that what it is that we are experiencing is seen and heard by others, that we are understood, that our world is being almost witnessed and shared by the people that we're sharing this journey with. Now, there's so many more needs in this, and we won't go through them all today. But when our core needs are not met, specifically as children, what tends to happen is that we consistently go in search of meeting those needs as adults. The individuals that did not experience love are often those that are most drawn to connection with others. The individuals that did not experience their needs, their voice being heard or seen, are often the ones that find other ways of having their voice heard. That it really prioritize that need to be heard and to be seen. And really value that. So it can go one of two ways. Our needs that were dismissed by the adults in our lives can either become the core need that we are seeking to fulfill in our own adulthood, or they can be the needs that we've dismissed in ourselves and potentially in others because we were never taught that they were important. Now, whichever way it goes, the relationship with our needs and owning and stepping up to recognize that it is our job to meet our needs first and foremost, to recognize what our needs are and to ensure that we're putting ourselves in situations where those needs can be met. That is a fundamental component of high self-esteem. But that takes a little bit of education because most people never had their needs met. Big people never had their needs met. So they weren't in a position to share and explain what those needs were to their own families. There are very few people out there that have come from a family that have been educated in this growing up. And so what happens is that as adults, we're kind of living without the full instruction manual to how this machine operates, which is our body. So what we do in this space is unpack and explore what those needs are and start to identify them for ourselves. And then we start to unpack what our job is in relation to those needs, almost like each need is a child that you're personally responsible for taking care of. So if my need to have boundaries or have progress were a child, what would I do to protect that child? Now, progress's core function is to see movement, to drive forward and to know that things are getting better and to know that in some which way there's purpose and momentum. So in light of that purpose and what it is that progress needs, how do I then take care of that each day? Now, what most people do is we wait, wish, and hope for other people to take care of our needs for us. And this is where a lot of despair and ultimately low self-respect comes from, because we don't develop a relationship where we trust ourselves to meet our own needs. Now, in the interest of time, I'm going to jump across to boundaries. Now, boundaries also are a core need, but they go beyond that. What are boundaries? Boundaries are the space between you and I. They are the space between two people, the division and differentiation between what it is that you are and need and what it is that I need and what it is that I aspire to, what I bring to the table, who it is that I am. Now, this seems very simplistic, and we all understand that there's a division between us and others. But where we don't see this play out is usually in the space of needs and emotions. So I'll give you an example. Until I started to do the work that I've been doing on myself for the last probably around 15 years now, but the large part of the last 10 years, I didn't have a differentiation between what made people happy and what made me happy. So a lot of the time I would feel like I was happy when the needs of others were met. When other people were happy, I was happy. Because I didn't know what made me happy outside of those people. So it took a long time for me to actually learn what it is that my voice and my essence needed to make me happy when everyone else's voices weren't on the table, when everyone else's needs weren't needing to be met. So having a boundary in this space meant that I could identify that what it is that I needed and what it is that I felt was not just synergistic with what everyone else felt around me. That there was a separation between other people's emotional states and my emotional state. Because here's what it could look like when there's not that. Walking into work, somebody's having a bad day, you immediately feel like you've done something wrong, that you're to blame for their bad day. Going home, your partner's not in the headspace or they're not present or attentive to you, immediately you feel like you're not enough, like you're lacking. Your lack is what's creating their response. So boundaries is a reflection of the work that needs to happen for us to actually get in tune with our own voice and learn what it is that separates us. Because what the alternative is that when we don't know how to meet our own needs and we don't know how to sit with our own emotions, often we generally determine and meet our needs through others. We feel emotion based on the emotions that we're seeing in others, which can become very, very confusing and often can also create a whole myriad of problems. Now, a boundary could be as simple as saying no. As simple as saying, no, I'm not wanting to do that today. I don't want to eat that cuisine. A boundary can also be, this is what I need and this is what I'm willing to accept. And if you can't meet those needs or you're not willing to participate in that, then that's okay, but I'm not willing to shift my boundaries and my perimeters. A boundary can also be simply saying, hey, I need some space right now. I'm going to disappear for the next 24 hours. Now, often what happens with boundaries is that when we don't know that we can do that, when we don't know that, when we don't trust ourselves to be able to handle what comes up when we start to put boundaries in place, we almost fear saying these things for consequences. We fear saying no because what happens if people reject us? We fear saying this is what I need because what if that makes me selfish? So there's a lot of the time when we don't trust ourselves to navigate what it is that we need and sit with our emotions, boundaries are a very difficult thing for us to put in place. So there's a reason that these work as a triad, because each one interchangeably adds to the other. Now, I'm just going to check in with our mathematicians or people perhaps who consider themselves good at geometry. I think at the beginning I shared with you guys the idea that this is a triad. In reality, it's actually a pyramid. Now, the difference between a triad and a pyramid is 3 extra sides. Because on each of these levels, there's a component which is internal, meaning our ability to navigate our emotional world, our ability to deliver ourselves, to deliver on our own needs and meet our own needs, and our ability to be able to respect ourselves enough to put boundaries in place as to how we expect to be treated, what conditions we will accept in our lives, what space we need. But the reason it's a pyramid is because each of these elements are reciprocal, meaning for every side that is inward facing, there is also one that is outward facing. We need to be able to sit with the emotions that come up in others. We need to be able to acknowledge and respect the needs of others. And we need to be able to respect and acknowledge the boundaries of others. Now, in being able to do those three things, we move from being able to have a healthy relationship with ourselves to being able to have a healthy relationship with the world. And that is pivotal. That is the difference between individuals who thrive and have healthy relationships, healthy stories of, challenge and overcoming challenges, and healthy bodily functions and overall well-being, to individuals who get stuck in the story of low self-trust and low self-esteem. Now, the key thing here is that all of these components, all of these components of self-esteem we've been talking about, emotions, boundaries, and needs, have been forged in our infancy. They've been forged in the years where we were just sponges to conditioning into the situations of our families and to other adults and to other events that were happening outside of us. So a lot of the time, to develop healthy relationships with emotions, needs, and boundaries, we have to unlearn the unhealthy emotional relationships, the unhealthy and unresourceful ways that we're meeting our needs, and unlearn, this idea of non-having boundaries or the beliefs that surround that, to be able to create space for this to emerge. So I want to take you guys back to that opening frame, to that game that we were playing of self-esteem, where we're staying within the triangle. What we just spoke about are the muscles that we develop in our body. They're almost like our quads and our hamstrings and our biceps that help us to push off the floor and come back into the triangle with ease, quickly, rapidly, with fluidity. The more we do it, the more unconscious that movement becomes, just like probably the movement of falling and pushing back up is for you. And that's the key to doing this kind of work. The more time you spend within the triangle, the easier it becomes to stay within the triangle, which is why when you start to move towards higher self-esteem, you tend to have more consistent high self-esteem. So just check in with that for a moment. Connect with what that might look like for you. And identify perhaps which ways the needs, emotions, and boundaries that we spoke about might need to be unpacked or explored. And if you've already got the skills to be able to do that yourself, go ahead and do that now. Give it the time and the space it deserves. Look at it with open eyes. And if you don't, and you're not quite confident that you have that awareness yet, reach out to us and we'll share with you the techniques that we use to help our clients start to see that which they've probably not seen for a while. Thanks so much for sharing this, guys, sharing this time with me. I hope you enjoy this vlog, and please feel free to share it with anyone that needs to hear it.